Coming up on the program, we're going to talk about the problems that we have had throughout the year on our tomatoes: early blight, late blight, spider mites, whitefly, and other problems. And we're going to dig up our late fall potatoes and see how they've turned out. All that and more coming up today on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener.
The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener is sponsored by the following: MIgardener.com, over 300 varieties of non-GMO, heirloom, organic flowers, vegetables, and herb seeds, all for 99 cents. MIgardener.com. Sioux Growing Supply, located in Wausau, Wisconsin, focusing on certified leaf compost, an excellent amendment for poor soil. With their new garden blend, improving soil structure in clay and sandy soil, great for creating new garden beds. Also available from Sioux's, pre-filled trays and pots with professional potting soil mix or organic rice hull-based potting soil mix. Bag and bulk of certified leaf compost also available. Visit SiouxGrowingSupply.com. Stop before you dig. Call Digger's Hotline first. Call 3 business days before you dig. It's the law. It's completely free, and it's for your safety. Know what's below before you dig. It's your responsibility. Call Digger's Hotline or visit them at diggershotline.com. HappyLeafLED.com, commercial grade grow light with a home gardener's affordability. No fans, no motors, simply plug in and grow. Great for seed starting to lettuce to full grown tomatoes, all indoors. HappyLeafLED.com.
Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. I'm Joey Baird. We're in the large garden in our tomato patch where it hasn't done nearly as good as it has in years past. And there's a couple of reasons why that is. One, we simply didn't set up an irrigation system because of the wet spring. We thought it would continue, and we completely guessed wrong on that. But more than that, we've had tomatoes have issues on them that we've never had before. Well, early blight is a typical issue that many gardeners face in their garden, and that can be because you're allowing the soil to splash up on the plant's lower leaves, and then that transpires up through the plant. You can combat that by mulching heavy around the base of the plant, also applying a whole grain yellow cornmeal that will fight the bad bacteria in the soil. Late blight, on the other hand, is an airborne spore that attaches itself to the plant and begins to cause black spotchiness, gray areas on the fruit as well as the vine. Once you've got that, you want to remove the plant in its entirety, dispose of it in the trash, and not burn it or compost it, because those spores can still remain airborne and get them out of your garden. If you have late blight, at the temperatures being cold enough, at least here in Wisconsin, the temperatures will kill that late blight off. So those are two common things that we have faced, and we're starting to face a little bit of late blight now. Other things that we have occurred is whiteflies and spider mites. Spider mites are tiny microscopic insects that web and destroy the leaves of your tomato plants. Now, something you can do to prevent that is 1 tablespoon of liquid seaweed to 1 gallon of water, and apply that on a regular basis throughout the growing season. What that substance will do is thicken the leaves of your tomato plants to prevent the spider mites from actually getting in there and eating holes in your plants and causing problems. If you're already past that, you can get what is a horticultural grade oil and apply that on your tomato plants. Another problem in which we have is whiteflies, an insect that we've never had before. These are white flies that live underneath the leaves. If you have them already, you can make a soapy mixture and spray that underneath the under portion of the leaf, under the leaves. You can find different recipes online. You can also get what is known as yellow sticky traps. A lot of indoor growers will use those to attract those spider mites to an adhesive, and they'll get trapped that way. You also want to weed regularly to keep all the unnecessary plants away from the tomato plants that potentially could be affected. So we've got a lot of problems. Our tomato plants also have been very dry. We've tried to keep water to them, but we are learning each year on what we need to do, what we can do, what we should do, and what we shouldn't do in order to better our tomato crop and our garden. So hopefully you have not had those problems, but if you have, those are some solutions in which you can practice the following years to come. Also, you don't want to grow your tomatoes in the same spot in which they are currently, we will rotate these to another bed. We have had some issues with the tomato hornworm as well, and you can attach containers like this in amongst your tomato bed to bring in birds to feed off of them, to feed off the bird seed, and they will also see this, the tomato hornworm on the plants, and sometimes you'll be able to identify those as well. Those will eat your tomatoes in its entirety. So our tomatoes have not been that good, but we'll make it better next year. Whether you have a weedy garden or a perfect garden, you should know when to harvest certain produce. This is a cabbage. It's a small head cabbage here. It should be about the size of a volleyball, but we take what we can get. Now, knowing when to harvest your produce is a key here, because if you harvest it too early or too late, it doesn't work very well. So what you're looking for on whatever size cabbage you have, the head is, you want to make sure it's firm. If it's soft and squishy, it's not developed all the way. What's doing is those layers are fixing together, and you can pull it up here. The layers are, if you unwind this, you just go layer after layer, but you want to go ahead and harvest it whenever it's solid like this. Now you can store this, just bust this off here, take out the outer leaves, you can put those in your compost or feed them to your livestock. And what you're also going to see here is a friend that's not a friend. That is a slug, and based on how large your cabbage head is, you might find them deeper into it. You can see that this one needed to be harvested a little earlier because you've got holes here of insects. And what you can do is you can peel this back. And the disadvantage to having a small head cabbage like this is, as you peel this back to get to some good material, it gets smaller and smaller. So the larger the head of cabbage is far better. We've had difficulty growing cabbage, and for us, it now has made sense to us to just buy it at the farmer's market, because you can buy baseball or a basketball size head of cabbage for like $2.50 versus trying to grow and deal with the issues at hand, plus the money staying in the local economy. But if you're growing your own, you want to make sure it's nice and firm before you harvest it. So it's time to harvest our late potatoes. We've got 2 rows here and then some in a grow bag. Now, what we've experienced here in our garden is a couple of things. A lot of weeds. We had a lot of water, a lot of rain at the beginning of the season, but the water has shut off, and we did a very bad mistake by not installing our irrigation system that we had. It rained, and then we decided not to do it, and then it got real dry, and we thought, well, it's going to rain again, and it did, and then it got real dry, and it got to the point where it didn't make sense to go ahead and hook up the irrigation system. It got too late in the year. You can see a lot of the weeds here behind us. The tomatoes, again, not doing and have not done very well as in years past. So what we have here, I've got 2 rows, approximately 12 foot, so 24 foot of potatoes here. And these are, most of these were old potatoes that we saved from last year. We had them in the cupboard. These were seed potatoes we harvested about a year ago. We went ahead and planted. In amongst the potatoes, we intercropped royalty purple bush beans. And up on this end here, we have a combination of yellow bush beans, green beans, and purple pod beans there. So what we'll do is we're going to be gentle around the center portion here where these beans are. We know that it's time to harvest the potatoes whenever the frost is coming, which is not quite yet, and the tops of majority of these plants have died off. That's an indication. Now, some of them have not died off yet. For example, this one here. But we're going to go ahead and just clean this bed out and see what our end result is. I don't expect it to be magnificent, but it's better than if we would have just thrown the potatoes in the compost pile and forgot about it. So look at it that way. Again, we're using a hard tine metal fork, not a hay fork. This is a flat metal tine fork, thick, heavy tines in order to dig the potatoes. There's a lot less chance to damage the potatoes with the tines rather than a shovel You're probably going to stick some of them, but this will also allow a lot of the dirt to fall through. So we'll just start up here. This is the beginning. That's the plant that has died back. So we're just going to get in here and see what we have. Now this is a variety, many different varieties of beans I have in this row. Now there is some moisture here. Let's see what we have. That's not promising at all. 3 little tiny potatoes. Well, look and see if I got anything else. You can see how cloddy the dirt is here. Nothing there. All right, well that wasn't too promising. Let's move down to where the next plant would be, which would be about here. Or here. I spaced them every foot, 8 to 12 inches apart. All right, so nothing so far. Here's a plant here. I can see the remnants of the stalk. So let's see if we have anything on this one. Well, we have one little potato there. That's all of that. So that would have been about the size of the potato that I planted, is what we got off that. Now, a couple of things here so far. If we would have hooked the irrigation system up, it would have obviously helped. As the dry conditions that we had, watering on a regular basis would have put more moisture in the soil, but it may have also pulled the moisture away from where we needed to put the moisture to, because the soil is so dry it would just absorb in a lot. We'd have had to pump a lot of water into it. So no matter if it's wet or dry next year, the irrigation system is going to go in very early, because we've seen what happens when you try to rely on being wet in the spring and then it turns off very dry. So these were planted about 3 months ago. Let's see what we have here. This is a green plant here. So one. So you can see this is not working out as well as any of you would have thought, or I would have thought. So I'm going to finish digging here and we'll see how few potatoes we get, and then we'll go over to the raised bed and the grow bag and we'll see what we have over there. So this is what we've got off that 24-footish amount of potato bed. Now they were small shriveled potatoes because they were old potatoes, they were a year old. So yes, that does contribute to the success of the plant that is producing new potatoes. But again, no rain for a number of weeks can greatly reduce your potato harvest. Now our spring potato harvest, if you watch that video, we had a really good spring potato harvest. This bed here, which will soon go in garlic, did really good compared to the other bed, and we got a good amount of potatoes. And we still have potatoes in the front yard we have to harvest as well, and then at the sister-in-law's. But this is just going to clean up everything we have here at the large garden. This is a 60-gallon grow bag. Last year we had irrigation in all 3 of these, and again, we hadn't hooked irrigation up this year, and we're not going to. We're too late in the season to have any beneficial effect to them. We did have some bush beans growing here, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull these up. They did produce, but the disadvantage to having intercropping in a container like this, it's going to be very hard not to disturb the roots of these plants when you're trying to dig up the potatoes here. So just pull the plant up here. Don't really see anything. Got a little nubbin there. This here. Got a couple of small ones. Oh, that's a decent sized one compared to what They were golf ball and large marble size. All right. Oh, and that's that purple one we transplanted. That was in that back corner. I'll see what else we have here in the back corner that we transplanted. So this is oh, here we go. That's a decent sized purple one. Now, the purple one was over in amongst where the tomatoes were going to grow, and or the cucumbers, when we brought it over here and transplanted the actual plant that was about 6 inches tall. So we did get 2 potatoes off of that plant that otherwise we would have just dug up to get our cucumbers in the bed. So we just want to sift around here, make sure there's nothing more there. And I did the potatoes on the outer edges and the beans on the center. So right here, this grow bag, even though it had just as much water as the garden, we've already seen a far better production of, I'll separate these, because we had good rich soil that held the moisture. Let's see if we got anything else. You have some roots here. And like that is the seed potato of what we planted. So you're gonna see what's left over. Oh, there's another one. All right. There's another one. So yeah, so there's a lesson here, and I'll tell you what that lesson is after I get all these dug up. So let me finish. I got 3 more plants here that I'll get dug up, and then we'll go over what we've learned here. Okay, so we've harvested the potatoes. You can see a lot of paper remnants here. If you follow us on a regular basis, when we filled this bed, it was a little lower, and we had compost in it from last year. So before we put more compost on top of it, I put a layer, about an inch thick layer of shredded paper, and then put the compost on top of that. Acted as a moisture retention method material, and it seems to have worked. If you just kind of look here, this here, ready? This here was from that bed that we harvested at first, the 24 feet. This here was from this 3-foot diameter 60-gallon grow bag. You can tell that there is about the same amount of potatoes, give or take a few, in the grow bag. So what is that telling us? The soil in that particular bed needs some help. This soil here is compost, and we've grown in it now. We keep adding compost to it. But the water retention method to hold the moisture with the shredded paper, the good nutrient-rich soil, which is the compost, has definitely helped in the potato development and growth. Not that all of our garden soil is poor or bad. It just, one, needs a lot more moisture, which we didn't have, and our fault not hooking up the irrigation system. And secondly, knowing what water and the growth in good rich soil can do for your potatoes. So fall potatoes not nearly as good as it was last year, but every year can't be a record year. Thanks for joining me. Join me again next time for more organic gardening and food preserving. I'm Joy Baird, and this has been the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.